Hello and welcome to Retrospectives, a video game history and review. My second ever video in this series was a combined video for Sonic the Hedgehog 1, 2, and 3. But when I was making those, I was still learning how to make these types of videos, so they're not that good. Many of the specifics that I go into are actually pretty well thought out, but I didn't go into enough. My biggest blunder was combining the three games into one video, so now I seek to fix that with this video by going over the things that I missed and giving a proper review of Sonic and Knuckles. Sonic the Hedgehog was created by Sega to counter Nintendo's Mario and act as their new mascot. He had attitude, spunk, and a cool speed gimmick inspired by casual speedrunning. His debut game, sharing the name of the character, was a massive success with quite a few flaws that make it hard to go back to today. Two different sequels were made, and the one bearing the number 2 title fixes most of the problems with the first and is an objectively better game that I really enjoy. Obviously, a Sonic 3 was inevitable, but Sega wanted to mix some things up. Their first idea was to make a 3D Sonic game, but then they looked at the console that they had to work with and decided to make a direct follow-up to Sonic 2. They weren't without ambition, wanting to make the game the greatest Sonic game yet, with more levels, characters, features, and quality than ever before. Sega decided not to hold anything back, and not only create the greatest Sonic game yet, but also market it so that people would actually play it. One of the marketing schemes was with McDonald's, a promotion where they would give out Sonic toys and Happy Meals. Production of the game was going great, but slower than expected. For the game itself, that's no problem, it wasn't announced yet, a delay means nothing. But for the marketing team, a problem arose. Many of their marketing schemes were timed, most infamously the McDonald's deal. They couldn't just delay it. Sega had 3 obvious solutions in front of them. Did they A. rush the game to meet the deadline, B. cancel the McDonald's deal and risk never working with them again, or C. announce the game early so the deal can build hype for the game before it is finished? The answer? D. Finish the first half of the game and act like that is the whole thing in order to meet the deadline and finish the rest of the game later. These days, that is a perfectly normal idea. Pretty much every game company has tried it at least once, but this was hardly these days. They went forward with that plan and released the first half of Sonic 3 as simply Sonic 3. And while the world started playing the shortest Sonic game to date, Sonic Team continued work on the other half of the levels and features. On either October 17th or 18th, 1994, I've seen both days as the release date, Sonic 3 Part 2 was released as simply Sonic and Knuckles. That Knuckles reference in the title is one of the villains of Sonic 3, which seems super cool. Imagine after Sonic Forces they released Sonic and Infinite, but Infinite was actually a good character. Here it is in all its glory. For those who have seen the Sega Genesis before, they may notice that this cartridge looks different from most cartridges on the console. That's for a very good reason. It has a special property that no other cartridge on the console has, something that revolutionizes gaming as we know it, something that we can't live without. Lock-on technology, where there's an extra cartridge slot on top of the cartridge, allowing for another cartridge to be plugged in on top, allowing for 2 cartridges to be plugged in at the same time. They did this so you could put Sonic 3 on top and get the original vision for the game, and Knuckles sign and all. An example of this combination is the playable characters. Both games let you play as Sonic, obviously he's the main character, but both games also have an extra playable character. Sonic 3 lets you play as Tails, and Sonic and Knuckles lets you play as Knuckles, but by combining the games, you can play as all 3 characters in all of the levels. Speaking of those levels, Sonic 3 ended with Launch Base Zone, and Sonic and Knuckles begins with Mushroom Hill Zone, but by combining the game, you go straight from one to the other. Sonic 2 introduced the idea of collecting the 7 Chaos Emeralds to become Super Sonic, who's invincible to all death except drowning and crushing, is faster and can jump higher than basic Sonic, but drains your rings and loses its form if you reach 0. In that first appearance, you enter a special stage to try getting an emerald by having at least 50 rings when passing a checkpoint, bringing you to the first instance of the dreaded half-pipe. Sonic 3 kept the 7 emeralds in the special stages, but mixed things up. This time, you enter a special stage by locating and jumping into a hidden big ring. Once the game was split in half, Sonic Team added more big rings in each stage so you can get Super Sonic with half of the intended levels. They did the same for Sonic and Knuckles, but now a new issue arises. If you combine the games, there are more than enough big rings for you to get Super Sonic or Super Knuckles before the halfway point of the game. To remedy this, the emeralds are taken away from you at the halfway point, and you can re-earn them to get the Super Emeralds. Using these, you can give Tails, who lacked a super form before this, an overpowered super form, as well as upgrading Sonic and Knuckles' super forms into hyper forms, which can run even faster, jump even higher, are immune to drowning, each have a move that can wipe every regular enemy from the screen, and Sonic can even double jump in any direction, acting like an early rudimentary homing attack. These forms break the game so much, and I love them. Those special stages that you get the emeralds from, both Chaos and Super, are the same across Sonic 3, Knuckles, and the combined game. They are referred to as the Blue Sphere stages, and are easily my favorite special stage out of any of the classic games. Look at that, Sega managed to get their 3D Sonic into the game after all. You walk around in a trippy dream world with very stiff controls, only going in cardinal directions in order to collect blue spheres. Once you get every blue sphere, you get an emerald. There are also red spheres which make you lose the special stage and get kicked out to the main level, yellow spheres that make you jump really high, and bumper spheres that shoot you in the opposite direction. Also, any blue spheres that you've already collected turn into red spheres, making it dangerous to retread ground and adding strategy to the order you collect the spheres in later stages. These are nearly perfect. I love them so much. They start at a somewhat slow speed, allowing you to analyze the stage, and ultimately get brutally fast as time goes on. The controls are just snappy enough that when you get into a flow state, nothing can match these. The only bad thing is the Genesis hardware struggling, which makes them a little hard to look at for long play sessions. Though there are only 14 stages here, there are actually so many more. You can play every single one of them by plugging a Sonic 1 cartridge into Sonic & Knuckles, or you can play a single random stage by plugging almost any other Genesis cartridge in. The only other game that does something special when plugged into Sonic & Knuckles is Sonic 2, which lets you play the entire game as Knuckles, which is just awesome. It's a little touch of detail that they did not need to do, but makes it so much better. Enough about the combined game, cool features, and special stages. This video is all about Sonic & Knuckles. Let's boot this thing up. This game has Knuckles? We can press start, but all we have is the option to play as Sonic or Knuckles. No save screen like Sonic 3, no multiple files, nothing. It's technically more advanced than Sonic 1 and 2 thanks to having 2 playable characters, but that's it. This is a noticeable downgrade compared to Sonic 3, but you can get the save feature and multiple files by combining the games, so it's not a huge deal. If you start with Sonic, you don't get a cutscene or anything to explain what's going on, but thanks to context in the manual, we can figure it out. Sonic and Tails stopped the Death Egg from launching in the last game, but Eggman and Knuckles are still working together to take over the world and launch the space station no matter what. If you play as Knuckles, you do get a cutscene, showing that his story takes place later than Sonic's. After everyone has left the floating Angel Island, the location of both games, Knuckles is just chilling when an Egg Robo, one of Eggman's robots, attacks him and he chases after it, playing through the whole game just to get back at it. The first level, as mentioned earlier, is Mushroom Hill Zone. It is a very chaotic and wild stage, but not a very hard one. It does not really feel like a first stage of a Sonic game, but it does the job. It's like if I was tasked with editing a feature film. Like, I have some of the basic skills on paper, but I don't have any of the experience or know how to do it. So it would get done, but not nearly as well as a professional. This zone is alright, all things considered. Definitely a highlight of the game. Not to mention, it's the easiest place to farm Super and Chaos Emeralds. I do feel like it is docked a bit for trying to be the first stage, as well as the many things that slow you down, like the vines and the pulley machine. 6 out of 10. Flying Battery Zone is next, and I adore this stage. Taking place on some kind of flying machine, this level feels alive despite being entirely made of dead metal. It has both long spaces for Sonic to use his speed, as well as slower platforming sections that are so well designed. The whole level in general is well designed, and is probably one of the best zones from any classic Sonic game. This stage is also a great example of the different routes that you can take based off of skill level. If you play as well as the Blue Rat himself, you can get to the top of the machine with large straightaways and speed-granting pulls, but also plenty of enemies. If you play alright, you will find yourself inside the machine with spaces to run, but also gimmicks to slow things down a bit and mix things up. If you're way past lame and play poorly, then you'll be at the bottom of the ship, holding onto bars and fans as you slowly platform your way. It's so well laid out that I doubt people will even notice this without looking for it. 9 out of 10. After that, we get to the worst zone in the game, Sandopolis. I really dislike this stage, and have a let's get it over with mentality while playing it. It's just not fun, with the first act taking place outside some massive temples, but showcasing some horrible maze-like level design. This would be a below-average Mario level, but this is Sonic, you need to go fast. Act 2 brings you inside with horrible gimmicks like ghosts and timed buttons, both of which make you go out of your way to pass them. Not to mention the horrible excuses for platforming that you are forced to go on between gimmick areas. Sandopolis is just not fun at all. 3 out of 10. Lava Reef Zone feels like a mix between Flying Battery and Sandopolis, with Act 1 feeling more like the first and Act 2 feeling like the second. In summary, it's a mixed bag. While you get opportunities to run fast and some fun platforming, you also have elements of waiting for things that feel oddly like Marble Zone from Sonic 1. The fire turning to crystals and rock in Act 2 is a cool touch, but it just leads to a disjointed and disappointing level. 5 out of 10. Hidden Palace Zone is hardly a zone, being one act for a boss fight and cutscene. This whole time in Sonic's story, Knuckles has been working with Eggman as a bad guy, so you get to fight him one-on-one. Or cheese him with Super Sonic, which you likely have at this point. While Sonic and Knuckles are fighting, Eggman begins to steal the Master Emerald, which as it turns out, is what allows Angel Island to fly, and was under the protection of Knuckles.
Now put that thing back where it came from, or so help me!
He decides to help Sonic, and you go to the next zone. Knuckles' version is not as cool, mainly just showing the Master Emerald being stolen again, as well as introducing Mecha Sonic. The final zone of the game is by far my favorite classic Sonic zone, period. Sky Sanctuary Zone. The biggest problem with this zone is that it's only a single act long. It's a giant, cool sky world that has an amazing aesthetic, music, and level design. It's a perfect mix of speed sections, well-designed platforming, and cinematic elements. For example, it explains the story of what's happening currently in the game through the background and enemy placement without slowing down the game in any way. It's such a fun level that I'm glad to see it has been reappearing in recent games. Sonic uses this area as a launch point to the final zone, but Knuckles' story ends here. Mecha Sonic acts as a recurring mini-boss through the stage, copying old Sonic bosses, but Knuckles ultimately confronts it. The robot uses the Master Emerald to turn Super in an area with a lack of rings, so you can't turn Super or Hyper yourself. The fight is difficult but exciting, a great final boss. Unfortunately, that's not the true final boss, at least in Sonic's story. The zone though? 10 out of 10! Jumping off of a final tower on Angel Island, Sonic launches himself to the Death Egg, Eggman's totally not Star Wars space station. The Death Egg Zone is alright. Other than some cool gravity gimmicks, there isn't anything of major notes for the level design. There are very few spots for high speed, but the platforming is fairly fun and fair. Only part that I don't like is this section with the bouncing platforms. Let's go with 5 out of 10. At the end of the level, you go against a giant mech's fingers. After that part, you get to do an insanely difficult second phase where the mech chases after you and you have to jump back at it while also running away and dodging massive attacks. I had to get my dad to help me with this the first time I played, but now I can do it like second or third try, so character development, I guess? If you have at least the Chaos Emeralds at this point, you get the true final boss, where Eggman takes the Master Emerald in a last-ditch effort to escape. You turn the tables and chase after him, having his missiles hit him to deal damage. Sonic loses his super form and falls down to Earth, which is apparently something that hedgehogs can just do. Sonic & Knuckles is a really good game looking back on it, including 2 of my favorite Sonic levels of all time, as well as some of my least favorites of all time. I would say its highs are better than Sonic 3's, but its lows are lower. I'm going to take a page out of my main inspirations book and rank the 4 classic Sonic games. I would say that Sonic 1 is the worst out of them. It's not bad, but just has some major flaws which its sequel build upon for the better. Next is Sonic 3. It has some great highs, but it's just not as noticeable or interesting as the other 2. Next is Sonic & Knuckles. I can't just ignore Flying Battery and Sky Sanctuary. Finally, Sonic 2, which is also not super notable, but is consistently fun all the way through and introduced Tails. If we count Sonic 3 and Knuckles combined, then that becomes my favorite by far. No idea where Sonic CD is gonna fall on this list. Thank you all for watching. If you like this video, subscribe, drop a like, comment, you know the drill, watch my previous videos. Just shameless plug. You know what this deal is. Thank you all for watching. See you all later. Bye!